Tamang kaalaman tungo sa malayang kaisipan. Ako po si Ferdy Isleta.
Ang kultura ay susi sa kadakilaan. Ako po si Annie Luis.
Isang oras ng ang kailangan. Ako po si Renena Peñas at ito ang
Padayon Presents the NCCA Hour. Sulong na!
Padayon, the NCCA Hour. Sulong na!
You who dwell in the shelter of the Most High, who rest in the shadow of the Almighty, say to the Lord, my stronghold, my refuge, my God in whom I trust. He will rescue you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions and give you refuge under his wings. His faithfulness is your shield. You shall not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrows that fly by day, nor the pestilence that stalks by night, and the plague that destroys by noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but nothing shall befall you. Look and see how the wicked are repaid. Because he clings to me in love, I will rescue him, says the Lord. I will protect him, for he knows my name. Si Freddy kasi, he's a practicing Catholic, pero he's not just religious, he's spiritual actually.
He was kind of eccentric, lovable.
Freddy is a character. Hindi mo siya ma-pinpoint eh. Punong-puno yan sa mga sorpresa.
Mahirap siyang pangitiin, mahirap siyang patawanin, pero lagi siyang nagmamasid.
He dared talk about suicide. He dared tackle lesbianism kahit hindi niya play.
Matapos ang ikalawang pandaigdigang digmaan, ang ating bayan ay naiwan sa pighati at pait dala ng giyera. Bukod sa ekonomiya at piskal na aspeto ng bansa, natupok din ang digmaan ng pag-iisip at pinakadiwa ng bayan. Sa kabila ng kadilimang naranasan ng mga Filipino noong panahon na yon, isang alagad ng kultura ang nagsilbing tanglaw sa kawalan. Gamit ang kanyang sining at hirayan ng panitikan, itinaas niyang muli ang mahiwagang kurtina ng teatro.
Tita Lily was telling her children, los libros de Tito Freddy, the works of Tito Freddy. The manuscripts of Tito Freddy, wag mawala yun. In the midst of war, she was thinking about the works of Tito Freddy. They had to be saved.
Ika-22 ng Enero, taong 1910. Ipinanganak si Wilfrido Maria O. Guerrero sa mag-asawang Dr. Manuel S. Guerrero, isa sa pinakakilalang doktor sa kanyang panahon, at Elisa Ocampo. Maagang naulila sa ama at maaga ring namulat sa katotohanan ng buhay ang batang si Wilfrido. Sa pagkamatay ng kanyang ama, hindi naging madali ang buhay na naiwang pamilya. Upang makapag-aral ng libre sa Ateneo, siya at ang kanyang mga kapatid ay naging mga koristo. 12 taong gulang lamang si Freddy nang matuklasan ng kanyang tiyahing si Maria Araceli ang kanyang talento sa pagsusulat. Madalas niya itong nakikitang nagsusulat sa mga piraso ng papel at isinisilid ang mga ito sa kanyang aparador.
He had a gift for satire, specifically the middle class. He would poke fun at them. And then he had a gift for dialogue. He's credited mostly with being a pioneer in the Philippine drama in English.
Estudyante pa lang ay nagsusulat na si Wilfrido Maria Guerrero ng mga dula at maiikling kwento. Ang kanyang unang dula na may isang yugto na No Todo es Risa ay kanyang nalikha nang siya'y high school. Gayon din ang kanyang L.S. Labonroto na nagustuhan ng periodistang si Juan Nolasco at itinanghal ito sa radyo ng 5 beses. Habang ang kanyang mga akdang maiikling kwento sa Espanyol ay madalas na nailalathala sa El Debate, kung saan editor ang kanyang tiyuhing si Fernando Maria Guerrero. Nag-aral sa Universidad ng Pilipinas. Nasa 2 taon pa lamang siya taong 1934 nang kanyang matapos ang kanyang unang dula sa wikang Ingles na pinamagatang Half an Hour in a Convent.
He's known for several one-act plays, di ba? Most notable of which was Half an Hour in a Convent. Ako yung gumanap na Yolanda doon. Three Rats, kung saan ang gumanap ng mga bida doon ay si Ami Reyes, si Jose Mari Velez na naging kilalang newscaster. I think Donnie Montelibano, 3 sila. And then meron din siyang isang kilalang comedy na Wanted a Chaperone. Diyan lumabas sila Julie Gamboa, puro mga theater stalwarts lahat.
The plays of Freddy are actable. There are plays kasi na ang hirap gawin. Parang it's not actor-friendly. Pero ang plays ni Freddy, for some reason, is actor-friendly.
Matapos ang 4 na taon niya sa UP, lumisan sa pag-aaral si Wilfrido Maria Guerrero. At tinanggap ang trabaho bilang mamamahayag sa La Vanguardia at proofreader sa Manila Tribune. Simula noon, tuloy-tuloy ang paglikha ng kanyang mga obrang pang-entablado si Wilfrido Maria Guerrero. Una siyang nagdirehe taong 1939 nang i-produce ni Fernando Po Sr. ang kanyang mga dula tulad ng Women Are Extraordinary.
Si Wilfrido Maria Guerrero bilang miyembro ng nirerespetong Guerrero clan ng Ermita belong to the old rich and with genteel behavior. No? Bihira mo yan madidinig sumigaw.
Mula taong 1940 hanggang 1947, nagsilbi siya bilang direktor ng grupong Filipino Players, isang grupong panteatro na kanyang binuo. Nagtanghal ng kanyang mga nilikhang dula at kung saan siya'y minsan gumanap bilang artista sa entablado.
Si Freddy, meron kami naging gumugulgul siya ganyan. Sabi ni Freddy, that's why it's called acting. You don't have to cry a river. You just have to communicate the emotion. Ayaw niya ng OA.
Very traditional director, very traditional storyteller and scriptwriter. Walang maraming palabok ba? Kaya yung istorya, madadama mo agad, makikita mo agad yung takbo eh. Walang maraming pasikot-sikot. Because I guess he had the disciplined mind. Aral naman yan, hindi lang dito sa Pilipinas, kundi sa ibang bansa. Pinadala yan to study his craft. No?
He won't verbalize what he wants. Kunyari, he will demonstrate how he wants it done. Ganun si Freddy to direct. He tends to exaggerate it so that yung mga artista makukuha ang essence ng gusto niyang makuha dun sa eksenang yon.
There was no fooling around when it was showtime. Everyone knew what he was supposed to do, what he was supposed to say. We were amateurs, but Freddy taught us to be professionals.
Si Freddy, gaya ng sabi ko, hands-on siya. Pag performance na yan, wala siya sa audience. Nandun siya sa backstage in one of the wings. Kasi naalala ko, wala siyang stage manager to speak of.
Ultimo yung sound effects siya ang gumagawa backstage.
Pati yata ang marketing siya. Lahat-lahat. In other words, he was a one-man show.
Sa loob ng napakaraming taon, nakapagsulat si Wilfrido Ma Guerrero ng mahigit sa 100 dula na itinangha sa entablado sa iba't ibang panig ng bansa. Umere sa radyo, habang 41 rito ay nailathala.
Yung Three Rats was pretty controversial because parang it was ahead of its time. It was about adultery, mga extramarital relations. Yung Half an Hour in a Convent was also controversial because at that time, suicide was a very delicate subject.
Yung lahat ng mga plays niya, commentary on society, and hindi siya natakot na isulat yung mga bagay na ito. Hindi siya naging duwag.
Ayaw niya ng mga plays na aristrada, which means ayaw niya ng artsy-fartsy plays. Gusto niya, stick to the material. Each material would demand a certain style, its style. No quiero aristrada. Ganun siya.
Taong 1947, nailathala ang kanyang unang librong 13 Plays. Isa sa mga unang bumili ng kanyang libro ay ang presidente ng Universidad ng Pilipinas na si Bienvenido Gonzales. Sa kanilang pagkikita, inalok ng presidente ng UP si Wilfrido maging katuwang na guro at direktor ng grupo ng drama ng universidad.
But it was President Bienvenido Gonzales who took him in, and it was unprecedented, I think, to have a faculty without a degree. But he wanted him to handle the UP Dramatic Club.
Hindi naman niya tinago yung fact na undergraduate siya eh. Kasi meron naman ding mga nagtuturo, tinatawag na on adjunct professorship sa UP na. Noon, he was given the adjunct professorship. Siguro nung nalang na-nominate siya, tsaka nagkaroon ng ganung technicalities, which again was apparently na-supersede ng kanyang mga achievements. Hindi yan nag-lobby na, sige na, tulungan niyo naman ako. It was the people around him who worked really hard para maging national artist siya.
Bilang katuwang na guro at direktor ng UP Dramatic Club, muling pinasigla ni Wilfrido Ma Guerrero ang matamlay na entablado ng universidad.
Yung UP Dramatic Club, talagang halos siya yung nag-umpisa niyan talaga eh. From the 50s, down to our generation, tinatag niya yung UP Mobile Theater para yun namang mga estudyante, yung drama team niya, ay magkaroon ng oportunidad na mapalawak yung kanilang experience at mag-perform sa labas ng campus.
Siya ang unang-unang alam kong nakapagdala sa teatro, sa grassroots talaga. Hindi kami pwedeng mag-inarte. Kung ang dadatnan namin dun ay mga drum na pinatungan ng tabla, kailangan mag-perform ka doon. Kung kailangan ng ilaw namin ay front lights ng isang jeep, kung saan kami nakasakay, you just go on with the show.
Those thousands of children in Luzon, in Visayas and Mindanao, who saw kailangan laban ng basketball and salarin, they did not forget that experience for a long time. And
siya ang unang nag-direct ng existential play, No Exit ni Jean-Paul Sartre. It's not an easy play, but he was the first one who did that. He also did the first gay play, Tea and Sympathy, which starred Tello Diaz and Bansa.
Sa loob ng 16 na taon, nasa may mahigit 120 dula ang naitanghal ng grupo na pinagbulan ng mga veterano sa larangan ng teatro, telebisyon at pelikula gaya ni Ben Cervantes, Juni Gamboa, Tony Mabesa, Ismael Bernal, Celia Diaz Laurel, Anton Juan, Joy Virata at Lino Broca.
A person of very few words. So, kumbaga nandyan siya, nagre-rehearse kayo, magsasabi lang siya siguro na ganito gawin mo. Or itong gawin mo, wag mong gawin yan. And then that's it. Pag nagkamali ka, yun na, doon mo lang maririnig yung kanyang famous.
Hindi ka pwedeng mag-adlib. Kailangan pag dumating ka doon, memoryado mo talaga. Doon ka makakarinig ng if you miss your line.
Bukang bibig ni Freddy yan. Ay, you know.
That's how he would say it. He would say it only once. And then you know that he is upset.
Nakatikim din ako ng p***ta niya. It was in the script writing class. This is not the right way to do it. Do not say everything in the first paragraph. Ganun niya. You have to distribute and give your actors a chance to interact. Pero sabi nga nila, kung hindi ka daw mahal ni Freddy Guerrero, hindi ka niya So okay na sa akin yun. Ibig sabihin, mahal niya ako.
Sa loob ng 35 taon ng kanyang paninilbihan bilang guro, mandudula at direktor, ihinatid ni Wilfrido Maria Guerrero ang makulay at makabuluhang sining ng teatro sa iba't ibang panig ng bansa. Ipinaranas niya ang hiwaga ng entablado sa masa habang siya'y patuloy sa paglikha ng mga obrang sumasalamin sa malalim at malawak na kaisipan, kaugalian at kamalayang Filipino.
It was an important breakthrough in his career that he was able to have his plays translated into Tagalog para maintindihan ng karamihan ng madlang people.
Para dun sa mga millennials na nanonood o nakikinig na meron pong hilig sa drama na ang puso ninyo ay nasa acting or theater, hindi ho siguro magiging kompleto yung history na pag-aaralan natin about our craft kung hindi din natin ituturing na makilala ng lubos pa si Wilfrido Maria Guerrero.
And I'm so privileged na he's one of my early mentors. So we miss him. I'm so glad there is a theater named after him.
Ang husay, orihinalidad at katuturan ng mga obra ni Wilfrido Maria Guerrero ay nagbigay daan sa entabladong Filipino upang mapanday nito ang pundasyon at pagkakakilanlan ng mga dulang tunay na Filipino. Ang kanyang di mapapantayang ambag sa larangan ng sining panteatro ay patuloy at mananatiling buhay sa mga linya at karakter ng kanyang mga dakilang dula.
He's being a member of a very affluent clan, a very prestigious clan, well-revered yung mga Guerrero. Nakapag-aral siya sa ibang bansa, pero hindi niya iniwan ang UP. Talagang he stayed with UP until his death.
Naalala ko, parang binigyan siya ng City of Manila, Pro Patria Award. Siguro yung malala na yung sakit niya. Sabi niya, nagpaalam ako, ayaw nga akong payagan ng doktor. Pero pumayag sila, pipirma lang daw ako ng waiver. Dinala namin siya sa CCP, nag-attend kami. Masaya siya, binalik namin siya sa lung center.
He never compared himself to the greats. He never said, I'm as good as Likhang or I'm as good as Shakespeare. He never said that. He underrated himself. But it was us who thought that he was a great artist.
Filipinong artista, kritiko, periodista, direktor panteatro, mandudula, Wilfrido Maria Guerrero, haligi at maningning na bulalakaw ng Filipinong entablado. Dakilang pambansang alagad ng sining para sa teatro, masigasig na alagad ng kulturang Pilipino. Sagisag Kultura ng Pilipinas.
Ako ay Pilipino, lahing matapang, lahing matalino, nalakbay ko ng mundo.
Walang unos o bagyo sa aking gugupo, lahi ng matatag. Ako ay Filipino.
Ako ay Filipino.
Ako'y makadiyos.
Ako ay Filipino.
Ako'y makatao, saan man makarating, sino mang makapiling.
Aangat ang galing habang buhay, Filipino.
Tumipod sanda ang mga isla, magkakahiwalay ngunit nagkakaisa. Tahanan ng aming lahi, mga pook na aming ninimithi.
Puno ng kasaysayan, puno ng hiwaga. Sa mga lugar na ito nakatanim ang ugat ng pagka-Pilipino.
Ako ay Filipino. Ako'y makadiyos. Ako ay Filipino. Ako'y makatao, saan man makarating, sino mang makapiling. Aangat ang galing habang buhay, Filipino. Kami ang lahing kayumanggi mula sa bughaw na langit at dagat. Mula sa pulang animoy dugo, hinalo sa dilaw na araw at bituin.
Yan ang kulay ng katatagan, yan ang kulay ng kagitingan.
From the simplest to the rarest of materials, from the barks and fibers of plants to the densest of hardwood, from paper and clay and precious metals to that most wondrous substance, a mind in flight, expressing itself in a torrent of words. These are the materials from which our traditional artisans and craftsmen have built solid and grounded traditions. Fragments of a nation waiting to be made whole. By men and women who bring an entire culture and knowledge system into their creations. These are the chosen materials of our indigenous craftsmen. They who are the embodiment of Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride. In a world where our natural resources are fast running out, wood and stone have become status symbols, materials associated with expensive building projects. But there was a time when wood and stone were plentiful, when they built great structures dedicated to agriculture, exploration, to the community, to noble ideas like nationhood and spirituality. In our continuing series on Materiales Fuertes, the materials that build a nation, we explore how wood and stone were employed by builders and craftsmen from all over the archipelago to build structures and objects that were vessels for the accumulated knowledge of a community. No wooden artifact speaks more of our resilience, our knowledge of the environment, our ability to adjust to nature's changes than a boat. Our ancestor made and rode on boats that survived perilous journeys across open seas. In Batanes, a land surrounded by rough waters, The skill of a boat builder working in time-tested and traditional ways is still very highly valued.
Nag-umpisa ko ng mag-practice ng mag-sarili is noong 1980. Nag-umpisa akong gumawa ng bangka. Ang paggawa ng tataya is para sa dagat, sa mga... Ang una namin paggawa kasi para pangisdahan ng dorado. Yan, dorado. Saka flying fish. Kaya namin ginawa yung bangkang ganito kasi nakita namin na mas maganda kaysa doon sa nakita namin na yung may cutting. Kaya gumawa kami ng ganitong itsura ng bangka. Kumbaga kasi wala siyang mababali, saka balanse siya. Kumbaga siya ay sumusunod dun sa kung anong type ng dagat, rough kaya o kaya may plane yung dagat, okay siya. Naglalaro siya, gano'n. Kaya yun ang advantahe nung paggawa ng kahoy na flat bottom ng bangka. Ito yung kahoy na ginagamit po dito is puro Palo Maria. Kasi yung Palo Maria, advantahe niyan is hindi siya basta-basta nabibiyak yung kahoy. Miski na naaarawan o hindi siya nabibiyak. Kaya yun ang asaka matibay. Kaya yun ang ginagamit na maraming klaseng kahoy pa na pwedeng gawin, pero the best is itong Palo Maria. Parang tingin mo na lang na kung anong gusto mong flat niya, kung pwede man naman siyang... Kasi kung mas flat siya, mas mabagal siya. Kung mas mabi siya, mas mabilis siya. Mas madali siyang tumakbo pag makitid siya. Itong tatayang ginawa namin ito, hindi purpose for fishing na. Educational bangka. Pag-aralan ng mga estudyante para hindi daw mawala yung old tradition bangka.
Equal to the Ivatan in their knowledge of boat building are the Sama Dilaut of Holo. Their knowledge of boat building and construction was tested in modern times by a man who believed that we have much to learn from indigenous technologies. Art Valdez's journey across ASEAN waters on a wooden boat built by Sama boat builders is his adventure of a lifetime.
So I went to Tawi-Tawi and looked at how they build the boats, and that's how it started. Then I saw that it's still the traditional way of boat building, shell-first construction. If you've noticed, the modern boat building is that once the keel is set, they put up the ribs and then the walls or the sidings. But the shell-first construction is that you have the keel and then you build planks. You built a shell of this kind, and then the ribs is the last part.
The use of stone in Batanes is not limited to the traditional Ivatan homes. Even the final resting place of the dead, the Ijang, utilized rock and boulders to create distinct, boat-shaped graves. On these Ijang, the Ivatan ancestors would journey to the world of the spirits on boats similar to the ones their living kin would sail on.
Ang mga boat-shaped grave markers ay ginawa ng aming mga ninuno bilang tanda ng kanilang pagkakalibing sa sariling bayan. Kung bakit naging hugis tataya or the local name for the rowboat, dahil ang mga Ivatan by nature are sea-rowing people. And the Ivatans believe that there is life beyond what they have here on earth. Na ang pagkaalam nila sa buhay pagka namatay na sila, merong buhay sa kabilang dako kung saan kinakailangan nila na nasa boat sila, they have to row the boat going to where the life after is. The graves vary in sizes because the archaeologists said that the bigger the size is, means that the one buried underneath is a grown-up or a mature one. But the smaller graves are for the juvenile. And they said that the arrangement of the stones has something to do with the social status of the one buried. If it's bigger, he could have been one who has a higher position in the society, say the mangpus or the chieftain. They said that it is close to the sea and it is in an elevated place. A lot of these graveyards are located in elevated places. So maybe because they see the importance of this dead person having life after death, they bury the dead in high places, which is overlooking the sea, because they see the importance of the connection of the land to the sea, to the life after death, where they are heading to. We do not know how long have they been buried here, but the archaeologists studied that they had been here before the Spaniards came to Batanes. They say it's prehistoric.
The use of stone and a knowledge of masonry enabled the Ifugao to create the great walls of their terraces, ranging from 3 to 20 feet in height, and able to contain both soil and water. No other structure among our indigenous peoples utilizes stone in such a difficult manner, or one that bears such life-giving harvests.
Ito yung mga bato na foundation na sabi namin na kopnad. Ito nakaupo sa bato rin. This is rocks. Pero malalaki ito. Tapos sinundan yung medyo maliit. Tapos yung maliit, pataas. Walang semento, kundi putik lang ang nag-hold dito sa bato.
There are still some Filipinos who think that the lack of pre-Hispanic stone structures like a Borobudur or Angkor Wat points to a lack of development, of vision, of purpose among our pre-colonial people, and definitely this is not true. As we have seen, small communities utilized these resources well to create technologies that served their purposes well. With the Spanish colonization came a new purpose for these resources, to build for the glory of the faith, the empire, and the colony.
Beside the fantastic, beautifully carved
Scholar Regalado Trota or Ricky Jose has written major works on the evolution and history of Philippine churches. His knowledge serves as our introduction to the traditions of church building, with wood and stone, with faith and force.
The first churches and chapels were made of simple materials of wood, bamboo, and thatch. That was the material used even until the 19th century, because we see pictures of simple churches in Mindanao using these materials. And some of them were adopting the bahay kubo on stilts. When the Spanish started to build, they realized that there were a lot of calamities that visited the Philippines. When they would build using stronger materials, fire was often a danger also. And here in San Agustin also, it burned down at least 3 times before they started to build the stone one. So by 1570s, by the 1580s, they started to think of building in stone, and that was not an immediate action. Up to the 19th century, I think even up to the early 20th century, they would have churches of stone, and then the pediments or the upper walls of wood or even lighter materials. There was a whole system in gathering the materials. Certain people would go up the mountains to cut wood, lumber. Remember that much of the Philippines was forested before, so they would have to select what kind of wood would be good. And this is the Filipino knowledge of wood. They would know which is the best wood for pillars, which is the best wood for trusses, which is the best wood for walls. So it is a very specific knowledge. Then there were others who did lime. The best lime was from the mountains because it should not, the less salt, the better. Because salt will absorb all the moisture. The lime was of different consistencies. No, some it depended on the stone, and the kind of stone, and the kind of construction, and also for the what is called the palitada, which would protect the stone or the brick from all the erosion or the wind. That palitada is a word which Filipinos use from the word paleta to apply the lime covering.
A sight familiar and beloved to most Manileños, a jewel of the faith that has withstood the destruction of Manila in World War II. Ricky Jose took us on a walking tour of the San Agustin Church to understand just how wood and stone were utilized to create this enduring structure. The San Agustin complex is more than just the church and the cloisters that many know. The original structure included both the ruins that now face the bay as well as the adjoining building.
Behind me is a very ancient door, and above it you can barely see the letters for Calle de San Lorenzo. And it's a mystery to us why there is a street name here, but I'd like to connect it to a very ancient ivory image in the collection here, also of San Lorenzo. So maybe this street name can be related to an ancient devotion to San Lorenzo among the Augustinians. That is what survived now because this street is called Santa Lucia. And having said that, I think this may be one of the oldest, if not the oldest, street name in the Philippines.
From the back of the complex, we now move to the iconic wooden doors. With the larger doors are two smaller ones called postigo.
We're now standing beside the fantastic, beautifully carved doors of San Agustin Church. Stylistically, they are from the Rococo period, which in the Philippines is about from the second half of the 18th century, from the 1750s down to the 1790s. I suspect that they are not original to the earlier church, of course, because they much later. I suspect that when the British came, when they sacked the church, they destroyed the doors. That's why when the British left, they had to make new doors. So these doors could date from about 1764, that's why they have the Rococo designs. Now, notice here the split in the doorway, which is what the Japanese did to create a space here. They took out this wood, put sandbags, and behind it there were machine guns. So anybody who would cross those streets could be hit by machine gun fire, covered by the sandbags, unsuspecting that there was machine guns on here. This is one of 4 Chinese lions. There are a few others in the other parts of the patio. And it stands as a symbol of the Augustinians inculturating of the Chinese elements into the Catholic Church.
Inside the church, more treasures, as well as clues as to wood and stone were used.
We are standing in front of the tomb of Legazpi, the founder of the Spanish city of Manila. His bones were interred here in some of the chapels in San Agustin, but they were upturned when the British sacked the church in 1762. In 1945, during the fight between the Japanese and the Americans, a bomb from launched from the University of Santo Tomas made a direct hit in this chapel, so everything was damaged. And so after the war, this chapel was renovated into the Chapel of Legazpi. And the frontal that we saw a while ago came from this chapel. This was originally the San Fausto Chapel. This is the inscription on the bell, Fecit Benitus a Regibus, which means made by Benito de los Reyes. Benito de los Reyes was one of the most important early 19th century bell casters in Manila. So there's a long line of bell casters in the Philippines. We can see here very faintly the inscription 300 and the symbol for a unit of weight, arrobas. Now, one arroba is equivalent to 25 pounds. So you multiply 300 times 25, and that will be the weight in pounds of this bell. This is the bell that used to hang on the left bell tower of the church. And in the earthquake of 1863, the bell crashed to the ground. 1863 or 1880, the bell crashed to the ground, and it was never moved until recently, and eventually it has moved to this place. The pulpit was installed in 1627. The carving is very similar to some of the frontals on display in the museum. And you see the twisted columns, but also they are the kind that you can insert a finger in between the carvings. So very, very rare. And so that gives us a clue to similar carvings where you can put your finger inside.
Then onto the brick dome and the great stone staircase that leads to the second floor of the cloisters.
Leading to the second floor of the monastery, and it is distinguished by huge slabs of granite called locally piedracina. Because they were imported from China, they were believed at the time to be ballast from the ships, but now we know that they were also brought here really to be sold as building stones for paving.
And finally, to the sileria, or choir loft, with an enigmatic altar awaits.
This is an assemblage of these parts from different retablos from the different areas of the monastery and the church. And this was put together in the 1960s when most of the church is being restored for 1965 celebration of Christianization of the Philippines. So, for example, this frontal of Augustinian saints comes from the San Fausto retablo, which used to be the left of the main altar. That chapel was replaced by the chapel of Legazpi. So it was brought up here. And here we can see different Augustinian saints. Here is the Augustinian seal, the heart of St. Augustine pierced by 2 arrows by the love of God, and bishop's mitre, bishop's hat. And there are 3 scenes of St. Nicholas of Tolentino, who was one of the major Augustinian saints all over the world, but especially in the Philippines. This is St. Nicholas appealing to a soul appealing for help. And this is St. Nicholas in a storm steering a boat to safety. And here is St. John of Sagun with a ciborium. And this is Santa Clara de Montefalco with the balance. And this is St. Thomas of Villanueva. So you can see the very Baroque, or what you call Solomonic columns, listed columns, put together from some retablo. These panels are actually placed upside down because the fruit should be drooping down and not going up. And above there is a symbol which you cannot identify, and then the very topmost there are 2 smaller volutes which are more proper for the side of a retablo and not for the pediment. The lower part of the base is 17th or early 18th century, and that part of the pedestal comes from the 19th century, mid-19th century, late 19th century, and the crucifix stylistically is from the 17th century. This can be considered like an icon of the different stages of history of San Agustin.
Inside the choir loft, which is currently being renovated, a wealth of clues as to how the original structure was first built and how wood and stone came together In creating this monument,
These details here appear, how the woodwork is fit into the stone. And these certain gaps here are interesting. And also, on the other side, there are holes for beams, which don't necessarily match the beams to hold this floor. So these talk about different construction periods.
the restoration of the Sileria was begun with a grant from the Spanish government and has been continued with the support of Filipino corporations and individuals. Another eminent scholar, Esperanza Bunag Gatbonton, has been in charge of this restoration. She guides a team of young and dedicated artisans and craftsmen, all trained at the Escuela Taller. In the hands of passionate and established scholars like Esperanza Bunag Gatbonton and Regalado Trota Jose, much the arcane knowledge that built and decorated San Agustin is passed on and made relevant again. But in the hands of these young Filipinos from Escuela Taller, the ravages of time are arrested. The new blends with the old, and more generations will yet come to enjoy and take pride in San Agustin. From the stone Idyang graves to the terrace stone walls of the Cordillera, from the wooden boats of the Ivatan to the speedy, sturdy vessels of the Sama, from the great stone churches of the Spanish colonizers to the enduring furniture and carvings, wood and stone have helped shape the most indelible images of communities, of explorers, farmers, and of evangelizers, of builders, all who have helped to shape an evolving image of a nation. We have the structures and the objects, but these are only important as reminders of the minds of their creators. Minds alive with Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride.